Hello, this video is for March the 24th, which is a Tuesday. I hope you guys are doing well. How's distance learning going for you? Okay? You know, we're as teachers are still trying to work it all the kinks out. Hopefully we're getting better at it. But today we are still talking about the continent of Africa. And just a review from yesterday, a biome. Remember what a biome is, okay? Remember, it's a large area of earth with plants and animals that share a similar environment. And we talked about Africa having five biomes: the rainforest, the desert, the savanna, the Mediterranean, and the highland. Excuse me. We also learned that yesterday Sahara means desert. And what is the unusual about Africa's desert? Remember, we talked about it. I don't know if you read it. What is unusual about the desert? Mia, do you know? Well, it's the only continent to have deserts both north and south of the equator. If you look at the map on page 258, you'll see the equator line, and then you'll see the Sahara, which is up north, and the Namib and the Kalahari on the bottom of that. Okay, the largest desert in Africa is what, Emma? The Sahara, you're right. And what is the Sahara like? Let's see. Mac, what is the Sahara like? Well, if you said sand, rocky plains, stony plateaus, and sand dunes, you would be correct. All right, so, and then we also learned yesterday the location of Africa, which is the second largest continent and lies to the southwest of Asia. We learned the climate is pretty tropical. It's warm temperatures during the day, cool at night, and the topography, deserts cover about 2/5 of it. Africa also has mountain ranges, rivers, has the the longest river in the world, the Nile, and then it has many natural resources, which is gold, petroleum, diamonds, okay? Sometimes in Africa they call them blood diamonds because it was very violent how they came across that. We are going to be, you guys are going to be on page 261 today. So I wanted you to take a moment, pause this video, and read page 261 while I wait. Okay, thinking that you've read it, okay, I want you to think of these questions. What methods were used to track migration routes of African people? Now remember, a lot of times we learned a lot, especially, so when we're talking about African people, we're not talking about the Egyptians right now because the Egyptians did it right. They had hieroglyphics, they had the papyrus, they had all that, you know, history. But some parts of Africa we don't know much about. So they didn't have written records. And a lot of times we get our history from written records. You know, when I teach you history, you have your textbook that I read the textbook, or you read the textbook, and then I explain it to you. If I don't know something, I don't go to the library anymore, but I can Google it. But I used to go to the library. You can get more information there. If I want more information, I'll YouTube it and show you videos, okay? We get our information through the language that we study. But Africa did not have a certain language, okay? Except for the Bantu tribe was probably one of the most successful tribes. They had a language, and they would travel around, and it's just like they would go from village to village. Now, Africa in itself, it's a pretty big continent. It has about 150,000 different dialects of languages in that continent alone, because it has, you know, the different tribal things. But the Bantu people would go from tribe to tribe, and they would stay there for a while, and sometimes the other people would adopt their language. That's how they knew where they were. It's kind of like English, the English language. We have taken language from the French, and we've used that, like table is from the French. We get that from the French, a French word. Let's see, Spanish. We get the word cafeteria, and a lot of things that we use from Spanish words. Latin words, Greek words, that's just how we adopted the English language, and we've adopted those words. And so these Bantu people would go to these different tribes, and they would take some of their language, and then they would go on and move it to other people. And that's how they kind of knew where the Bantu people were, because they could pick out all the different words or languages from these people. So that's one thing, linguistics. A linguistics is a person who studies different languages. You may hear like someone wants to, you know, a linguistics person, if you've ever watched the crime shows, or people who are in the CIA or things like that, they know a lot of different languages. They can speak maybe Russian and German and all that stuff because they study these languages. I think that would be a cool thing to do, but I can't even say the Spanish words correctly. And then, so linguistics is another one way to learn about a certain tribal or a certain group of people. Botany is another thing. Botany and the different types of plants. These Bantu people would go around and they would plant different seeds, and whether it be corn or something that they were known by. So every time they would migrate to a place, they would plant their seeds to grow their crops. And when they would move, they would take their seeds with them. And so they could botanists could track the seeds to see where the Bantu people were migrating. Another one was archaeology. Archaeology could be what they discovered, where the people live, ancient ruins, the manner of life that they had. You know, in some cave drawings, like if they went to Africa, they could do that. They could see if they were hunters or fishermen, things like that. They could, they would find symbols. It says right there, though, that no one has ever been able to discover what the symbols meant. You know, unlike Egypt, like we said, Egypt is a little bit more easier for us to study because they left so much behind, not so much with these other African countries. And then oral history. Another way of learning about ancient people is through oral history. It's through the spoken word. Yesterday I read you a story of the griot, the storyteller, who would, he didn't have something to go by. He just learned the story from maybe his father. His father told the stories, and his father learned it from his grandfather. And stories would be passed down from generation to generation. And he would memorize these stories, and so he would tell the children in the village the certain stories. And that's how they knew their history. You know, my relatives, we used to, when all my uncles would get together, they would tell stories of how they were when they were little. And they were the funniest stories. But now they're all gone. They're all in heaven now. And so those stories could die with the second or third generation if we let it. But if myself or if my cousins and their children could pass down the stories from that generation, then it won't die, you know. We can let it go. So those were the griots. And so you're going to have to remember that. So remember, the griots told the stories. Sometimes they were fables, and sometimes they were just stories of the family and how the tribe came up to pass. Okay? So, what was the significance of the African griot in preserving history? So, that's basically it for today. If you have any questions, go ahead and text me. Now remember, I've said this and I think there's confusion. You do not have to do the activity manual unless your parents want you to. That you don't have to do. I know in a few days they have you doing like a tie-dye kind of thing for this class. If you want to do that, that's fine. It could be something fun for you to do for history. The only thing you have to do is write down 2 or 3 sentences of something that you learned in today's lesson. And you can text it to me or you can email it to me. As of right now, I've only had 4 of you students who have done that. So don't forget to do that so you can get credit for that. Remember, there's no test and no quizzes at all. So you don't have to worry about that. All right? I think that's it for today. I love you guys. Once again, text me if you need it. Anything. Bye.